Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's guest is Kelsey Walmer. She's an LA-based actress, model, cosplayer, and voiceover artist. Her film credits include Bookworm, Genie 1.26, and the animated short Babiole, for which she won Best Actress Award at the 2014 Women's Independent Film Festival for the title role. In addition, Kelsey has been a featured model for pinup girl clothing, most recently appearing in their Heroes and Heroines lookbook. Kelsey can also be seen performing during Summers and a Dancer, and she was a character actor in The Labyrinth Ball of Jareth. And this December, she's going to be in a new play called Snowed In. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, Kelsey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that we finally got our schedules to work out, time zones to be conquered.
Long overdue, long overdue.
Long overdue. You were one of the first people, and you had asked me to send you samples of what I had actually done, and at that time I had only recorded with one person. So it's fantastic to get you after having started this project, and you had been one of those first people I had initially reached out to.
I'm so flattered again. I'm like you mentioned, I'm an actor, so I always, whenever someone asks me into a project, I'm always like, what can I do to prepare? What can I listen to? What kind of material can I pick up to figure out what I need to do beforehand?
And what's great is, but at this point now, I have the 13 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
As we record. Number 14 comes out tonight at midnight. And so it's been good for you that you've been able to listen to just more than my first recording that I did and kind of get a general sense of what goes on here.
Yeah, and take a little peek behind the curtain when everything was still kind of getting made and put together.
Oh, absolutely. At that point, I had no clue how to edit anything. I was just like, I'm going to figure out how to just do a few cuts and send some samples over, and hopefully she'll like them.
Oh, yeah. But the best projects are just, I'm going to nose to the grindstone. I'm going to make something because I want to.
Absolutely. So, how would you describe fandom, Kelsey?
So, to me, fandom is taking being a fan of something to the next step, whether it's I'm going to start cosplaying as something, I'm going to start seeking it out if they're doing a live theatrical release of a movie, or whenever you take that being a fan to the next step. I'm going to wear a lot of t-shirts. I'm going to do research on where the project came from originally. If you liked like the anime, I want to go read the manga. It's when you go from just enjoying something to really wanting to dive into the meat of it.
And what are you into?
I am into a lot of things. The short list, big Disney fan ever since I was little. Big into comics, DC, Marvel. Love Doctor Who. I was an animator in college, so I've got a wide animation fan background. From Laika, really love DreamWorks. Miyazaki is one of my favorites. Lots and lots of things. Also a big podcast listener. So love listening to Night Vale, Black Tapes, lots of kind of anything that's got a great story to it.
Now, let's just start off with DC, because one of the things that, or initially how I found you was by looking on Instagram for people that were like doing cosplays, because if most people who do cosplays obviously or hopefully like the material that they're doing. And yours was so different because of the style of dress that you were like doing. You were doing, instead of like the traditional, like let's say Harley Quinn, either the jester outfit or her more recent outfits from the video games, you were doing very like classic pinup style outfits. And that was what most drew me to you, because I was like, wow, like they were just so well done. And I really liked how you portrayed the characters between like Harley Quinn or Poison Ivy.
Thank you so much.
So how did you get into DC Comics?
So DC Comics, I grew up with the animated Batman series, and at the same time I also grew up with, my mom was raised watching the Batman series from the 60s, so I watched that movie probably dozens and dozens of times as a kid, and Adam West and the hand me the shark repellent. Um, so I've always been a big fan of the DC universe. I think the characters are really fascinating. But the more I grew up and the more I rewatched the animated series, I loved they really dove into what made these characters tick. And I think for me, that's always been what's great about comics, that you can go so far into a character and really piece apart what drives them, what motivates them, and that's one of the reasons why Harley Quinn is one of my absolute favorite characters, because I just think she and, of course, Joker are these sad, broken people, but very, very determined. They always have a plan, they always have a goal. They're toxic together, but they can't seem to get rid of each other, and just that
Hmm.
that constant conflict, but also like undying love, or at least on her end, that just wraps them together. I just always have found that so fascinating.
Okay, yeah, definitely, especially with Batman the Animated Series, that was the initial debut of Harley Quinn,
Hmm.
who hadn't existed anywhere else.
Exactly.
And now she's become one of these major characters in the DC universe, both in the comics and with obviously like her appearance in Suicide Squad
Hmm.
and her potential for her own movies
Hmm.
at some point.
Yes, very, very true. I think I'm also drawn to those characters, also drawn specifically Poison Ivy, Pamela Isley, because they're characters that have so much education and experience behind them, because they're both
Hmm.
doctors. And I think I love that we now are being able to, or we're now creating more and more strong female feminist characters, but they came about in a time when it wasn't didn't have such a light shined on it. But as here she is, a very trained botanist. She's gone out and done field research and done work. And yes, there's kind of and here she becomes a sex symbol, but it's also, I think, fun because it's a character that can. Here's my list of assets. I'm intelligent, I'm educated, and I've got a smoking hot body, and I know which one to use in which situation.
Right. And I think that's something that actually gets overlooked, especially with Harley Quinn recently
Mm-hmm.
and with Poison Ivy a lot, is that they don't really focus that either of them were professionals in their field,
Mm-hmm.
doctors. Like I think that gets lost somewhere. I'm not sure where it happened because in the animated series they make it very clear on both Harley's backstory and with Pamela Isley
Mm-hmm.
that they're professionals,
Mm-hmm.
that they are very educated women, but it's gotten lost since like the late 90s
Yeah.
to where they've become now.
Yeah, and I think we'll see it come back around. They hint at it a little bit in Suicide Squad, but granted, it's a bigger film with a lot of people. But they did touch on that a tiny bit, which I appreciated. Here's where she comes from. She had her goals. She's a smart, driven person, and I wish they went in a little bit more of, she went to the Joker wanting that story, wanting that scoop, because she was going to go in, break the Joker, and write a hit novel and retire at 28 or however old she is.
Right.
Um, but I want them to explore more of that, because I think that's it's so fun to see kind of like the pre manic, like she's got a little bit of that double crossing conniving plan there already.
Definitely, definitely. And I'd love to see if I'm not sure what they're going to do setting up like the DC universe at this point with Batman or the villains,
Mm-hmm.
but I would love to see Poison Ivy
Oh yeah.
be at least like a standalone villain, like not having a need for multiple villains in the movie, but just her as a standalone would
Mm-hmm.
be really interesting to see portrayed
Mm-hmm.
as an equal to Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Like it all, like the Batman animated series, she seemed capable but always got taken down real easy.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to see her be like such a dominant force because you've seen in the comics she's definitely like up
Oh yeah,
there.
she's a force to be reckoned with when she wants to bring out her full strength. She's got some power behind her.
So now, do you read any of the DC comics, or do you just play the video games or watch the movies?
Watch the movies. I'm very behind on comics. Just there's not enough hours in the day.
Right.
I find myself more and more actually revisiting older content, like the animated series, and wanting to go back to things before moving forward. I've got on my to-do list to go back and play through the Arkham series again because I know I missed so much in my first playthroughs. But I
Hmm.
think I know there's so much content out there, but I always want to go back and find all the little like golden nuggets that were there that I would have missed.
I know for me, I never grew up with DC
Hmm.
Comics, so I'm not as familiar with, besides the Batman movies, which I'm pretty sure everyone's seen at
Hmm.
some point. But I'd really love to see, because what's come recently as far as characters go is the relationship between Harley and Poison Ivy.
Hmm.
And I'd really love if, I don't know if DC offers like a collection, or if they're out on the internet somewhere where you can kind of see like pick up these comic books to see their interactions together, to see that relationship built, because I'd really like to see that.
Oh yeah, and they've got such a fascinating, evolving relationship because I one of my favorite moments with them. I think this is from the animated series. It's the two of them driving in a car, and two guys are next to them, and the guys start catcalling them, and Ivy's like, just brush it off. They're not worth our time. And then Harley Quinn pulls out a bazooka and blows their car away. And I just think that's such a funny moment, and they've just got this like kind of effortless sister bond, but it's also now evolving into something very, very different that you kind of people have been hinting at a romantic relationship between them, which I think is a fascinating thing to explore because they're both strong, independent. Well, Harley Quinn, when she chooses to be independent, villainesses, and the idea of moving forward of, well, what if they were together?
Absolutely. And yeah, definitely. I mean, Harley does have that. I guess you'd have to definitely say it's a downside with her love or obsession
Hmm.
with the Joker, and his, at least in the animated series and throughout the comics. I mean, she was just a tool for him,
Yeah.
almost, to like break down, and really he just drove her
Oh,
crazy.
yeah.
It's nice to see when she's able to not be so into him and do her own thing, just character wise, because I know that a lot of it recently with the Suicide Squad coming out has been that romanticization
Yeah.
of their relationship. And people, I know I saw a lot of memes out there about how if you're romanticizing or wanting and saying, wish I had that relationship like Joker and Harley, like those
Eh,
people aren't really getting that.
they're essentially an abusive relationship. They are,
Yeah.
yeah. And she's got I always feel bad saying this one out loud, but she's got a little bit of Manson girl in her, which is it is what it is.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've noticed that a lot too. A lot of there was kind of two camps of, oh, I love their relationship, and it was interesting because I tried to go into the movie as blind as possible. But they do, it does feel like they downplay the abuse within that relationship and upplay the. It was there were foreign moments to me of like, to me, I've always interpreted the Joker, if he's coming to rescue or gather Harley from a situation, it was almost like a recouping of my property. And they did
Right.
definitely romanticize it a tiny bit more in Suicide Squad, where it felt like, okay, he's really looking for his girlfriend. And that seemed so, it felt very foreign to me. I hadn't seen it in that light in a long time, or that kind of emotional attachment. So it was very different. And it's a different universe. It's a different reboot.
Right.
I'm not as well versed in Suicide Squad, the comics, as I should be, so I might be speaking out of turn on something too.
And apologies to whoever's listening that is currently saying, well, you didn't read this
I
comic,
know there's
because
someone out there. There always is.
always, because I was rewatching a YouTube
Mhm.
clip about Batman, or Harley Quinn and
Mhm.
Joker, and it was fascinating because as I grew up watching that, I think I was in my teenage years, 13, 14, somewhere around there,
Mhm.
when the show was airing, and the clip that they showed had Joker throwing Harley out of a second or third story
Mad love.
building.
That's mad love.
Yes, and, like, she's on the ground laying there, and she's like, "Oh, I guess I didn't get the joke," and it's like, there's not
Oh,
really a joke.
yeah, it's the so what happens is it's Joker's trying to figure out plans and he's I'm going to take down the Batman, how am I going to do it? And she thinks this is going to be so great. I'm going to set up his whole trap how he wants and then he is going to like come to me and go, "Oh, Harley, you're the best thing ever. I'm so happy and now we've taken down Batman and we can run off and have a family together." So the I think the thing he's struggling with is he wants to drop Batman into a bunch of piranhas. And of course, they have their little grimacing faces, and he can't figure out the plan. So Harley goes, "Oh, I get it. We hang him upside down, hang the Batman upside down. So then the piranhas look like they're smiling. But then, of course, the Joker's like, "How dare you build out my plan? You're my minion at best," and throws her out the window.
Right.
But there's also several scenes leading into it where he throws her out of their warehouse house, their wherever they're staying. But it's a brutal, fascinating cartoon and comic. But yeah, it's ugly at times.
Definitely. Definitely, and it's something where I wish it was on Netflix so more people could check it out. I've heard that I think someone I had spoken with earlier said that it was on Amazon Prime,
I
possibly?
think so because I think Batman Beyond is on Netflix, and I think it was one of those one's one place and one's the other. I have to check again. But
Yeah. But I wish more people were able to check it out because that's such an iconic. It's one of those things where it's almost like the best thing that's ever happened for Batman was that cartoon series.
it's so fantastic and it's so well shot. The film noir style adds to it so well. You could see it, coming off of the tales of kind of the 60s. Batmans were goofy, but the Tim Burton ones were very serious. And then, of course, you have Batman and Robin. That is what
Mhm.
it is. But it was so nice to see it take itself so seriously. I've actually found that they've been reprinting a lot of really famous comics as coloring books. And I had been going through the Mad Love one as just a coloring book, something to do kind of for fun in my spare time. And that I've had fun because it was each time I was working on a panel, really just kind of diving into the way they've structured the shots and finding all the little gems that are in there. Like there's one great shot that it would go by so fast. That's Harley imagining her as like a housewife and the Joker as her husband and their two like 4-year-old kids running around and just all the little like here's a bear trap the kids are playing with and here's a stick of dynamite and all these just little gems that are in these shots that it's just so wonderfully made.
It is. It's such. I mean, I can't say enough about it. I know I talked with Ashley on one of the previous episodes about Batman, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's one of those shows. If you grew up watching it, it sticks in your mind forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like even here, like if you heard the theme music, those beginning pieces of that theme music, you absolutely know what's coming
Oh,
next.
absolutely. Turns your head in a
So,
crowd anywhere.
oh, absolutely. Now, another animated show that you're into that gets a lot of love from me after taking a few episodes to get into was Bob's
Yes.
Burgers.
Love Bob's Burgers.
Now, did you start off watching it when it first came on, or did you find it on
I
Netflix? What
found
was
it years later on Netflix that I think my roommate was watching it and I went, "Oh, what's this?" Because I remember seeing the trailers when it first came out and not liking the commercial and being like, "Well, this looks stupid." And then
absolutely right there with you because I thought the animation looked weird, and I was like, it's not coming off as what I was thinking it was.
yeah,
Was my original like first 3 episodes I watched, and I was like, it's not for me.
uh-huh. And I just remember in the commercial they had that shot from the pilot where it's Bob and Linda kissing and then it ends up as like a really weird moist kiss and there's saliva and I remember watching that in the commercial and
Yes.
being like, "Ooh, I'm not watching that." But I came in the middle of season 1 on the Tina's birthday episode where Louise is trying to wingman her and she wants like 16 candles, John Waters, like everything uh, everything's so sweet 80s saccharine birthday party and just being in stitches the whole time and not knowing what to do with the show and being like, why have I never sat down and watched this? And then I think I caught up in every season within like a week.
I'm right there with you. My friend was like, "You need to give it a chance," and I said, "Okay, you always recommend really good stuff,
Uh-huh.
so let me go back and watch it." And I think I watched everything that was on Netflix
Mm-hmm.
within maybe a 2-week time period.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Just powered through it without even trying. I think it's such a funny, intelligent show, and the characters are great. The voice acting is great. The stories are great. I'm a big fan of puns, and they're just littering the show. So I just my friend and I were at Comic Con, and we found their booth, and they had a sign that was just burger of the day, and it was just flipping through them, and I think she and I stood there for the better part of like 3 minutes just reading it. Probably switched every 15 seconds, just reading them out loud, and I'm sure driving whoever was in the booth absolutely nuts.
That's hilarious. Who's your favorite character on the show?
Oh, I gotta say I love Louise. I just love that she's just this 9-year old who thinks she's like a Bond villain. But there's such like a genuine like loving earnestness about her when like her siblings do actually get messed with, of I will take you down. But she's just great. She's just so funny and so smart, and there's so many sarcastic remarks that come out of her that go, yeah, that sounds like something I would say. This is what I wish I was when I was 9.
Absolutely. Like that is I watched that and yeah, you always forget how old like Louise is because she does not act anywhere remotely except for the boy band
Oh, I
episode.
love Boys for Now. That one
Yes.
is so funny. Whenever she's in the bathroom and she's staring into the mirror and she goes, "You are sick, Louise Belcher, sick." Absolutely
Uh,
kills me.
I think my favorite is Gene
Uh-huh.
just because I mean he's just so random at times.
He's got some of the best side comments that if you aren't paying attention, you just miss them.
Yes, it's something where like I watch it when I'm doing when I
Yeah.
work. So I have it on the side and I can listen and you don't really need to see you don't need to be paying attention all the time, but if you're listening, you catch those really funny
Oh,
moments.
yeah. He has one line that my friend pointed out to me, that they're talking about something with holidays or something not mattering, and then he just like walks in, says one line, and leaves. He just goes, "Well, we have Arbor Day, and that basically serves no purpose," and then just walks out of the shot. It's just such a funny comment. And then I
Uh,
gotta love Tina, just so much brimming with so much teen angst. And if I ever got to a convention and had a question to ask for the Bob's Burgers panel, I would love to ask. It was Dan Mintz, I think is his name, who voices it. What is it like to live through the experiences of puberty as a 13-year-old girl as a full-grown man? Would love to know what he's doing to get into character.
That that would be a really great question, and I'd love to know the answer to it because it's always fast. Like with The Simpsons,
Yes,
like Bart is voiced by
Nancy Cartwright.
I
Yep.
believe Nancy Cartwright, and it's always interesting to see those like the voice actors and be like, how do you do that?
Yes.
Like
Uh,
it's so incredible.
it's so fun. I do voiceover, and that's kind of one of the things that drew me to it. Is it always seemed to me like such an acting challenge. Play something that is so against your type. My mentor and very very good friend of mine, her name's Debbie Derryberry, and she's known for playing a lot of things, but one of her main characters she's known for is Jimmy Neutron, which if you ever meet her, she's a very 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 sweet. She's very tiny. She's like 5'2", sweet woman, and Jimmy Neutron's a 12-year-old boy, and it's or not even. He's probably younger, 10, but hearing her work and get into that, here's how you can take the muscles in your throat, your mouth, wherever, taking it as a mechanism and get yourself to sound a certain way. It's always just been fascinating to me.
That's something that we'll talk about in a few
Sounds good.
minutes because I really want to make sure I focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing and people who are listening know that I send out these like very informal questionnaires so that way I can kind of get a sense of what people are interested in. And one of the things that popped out when I got yours back was that you really like the writing of Neil Gaiman.
Yes, yes. So I discovered him the first time I saw Coraline, and I'd heard his name before, but the first time I saw Coraline was like a earth-shattering experience. That movie, I thought it was fantastic. It was dark, it was whimsical, it was gothic. I love anything that can kind of marry like whimsical, sweet fantasy with a very gothic, gritty core. So that movie was everything, checked off every box for me. So then I started reading his books, and he's got so much material. And I'm still trying to work my way through all of it. But I really have loved reading his short stories because I think there's such a great kind of Lovecraftian, otherworldly. You never have all the answers. You have most of the answers and you can infer some things, but like with Coraline, you never really know where the other mother comes from. You never know how it started. You never know what was the thing that brought this creature to exist. And he's got, there was one short story that has always stuck with me where he talks about this cat, and the cat is like watching the family or protecting the family. And he talks about it would the cat was outside during the night. They'd come get the cat in the morning. It was just talked about like it was a house pet, and it kept getting these scratches on it. It kept getting more and more beat up. So then they said, well, it's got to be an indoor cat. There's got to be a raccoon or something outside. So they bring the cat inside, and slowly bad things start happening to the family. Like the wife gets in a car crash, the brother gets beat up by a bully, that all these bad things start happening, and they realize there's some kind of a dark entity that's feeding on the family. So the cat has become this protector of it. So they let the cat stay outside, and the cat is getting, so the next night the cat's beaten up again, but it's protecting the family. It's not like it's a sacrifice, but just leaving on this note of you don't really ever know what is out there. You don't know what the cat is, but also on this note of like, if I don't know how much longer the cat can stand this, and whatever is after us, and it can get to us if the cat can't be there. Anyway,
Well, that's just creepy.
oh, I just loved it. It's like I listened to it. I listened to a lot of audiobooks. So he was narrating the audiobook, which is great. So I want to say it was maybe a 5 to 10 page short story, and it's just stuck with me for years. So it's very vivid, evocative writing, and it's always creepy. And I love mystery and horror. So just anything that kind of generates that.
Definitely. I know for me, I always loved American Gods,
Mm-hmm.
and
Are you
then
excited for the
the
series?
I am. I It's sad to say that the last time I read through the book was back in I think 2005,
Mm-hmm.
which that puts it about 11 years ago.
But then it turns
So
into the game of, do I read it before the show comes out? Do I let the show come out then read
exactly.
it? Start.
Well, see that was the problem with Under the Dome by Stephen King
Mm-hmm.
is I read the book, and then I think about a year or two later the TV series came out, and I hated it because it wasn't anything like the book.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I think what I'm going to probably end up doing with American Gods is I'm going to just watch it, and then I'm going to hope that it's a good translation of what I remember, and then hopefully I'll stick around. If not, I mean, I've always got the book to go back to.
Uh-huh. Generally, I feel like Neil Gaiman is very precious with his material. So he does not. One of his other short stories, and I need to research this one because I don't know if it's a actual short story or he wrote it as not as fiction, but from the perspective of if someone was trying to buy one of his books and give a treatment. But he talks about going back and forth. Okay, we've got this list of executives. We've got these people wanting me to do a rewrite. We've got these people doing this. And ultimately, in the short story, he talks about kind of like driving it into the ground, going, I don't want these people to take my baby and turn it into something else. So I feel like he was up at the panel at Comic-Con. I feel like they'll do right by it if he's standing by the project.
Right.
I also there was an interview I heard with him after Coraline came out that he even was he felt like they improved upon it, which was really funny. That he was like, yeah, we should have had the YB character in the book because otherwise she's walking around talking to herself, and oh, this setting makes so much more sense. And he was like right and left going, yes, this is exactly what this should have looked like once it got translated. And I think their ideas were brilliant. So I'm hoping American Gods, the series, is something like that.
Oh, I hope so, because there's so many other creators where, especially authors, they sell the rights to their stories,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have no involvement at all in what happens, and you get just really either you get terrible adaptations, almost like 9 times out of 10 from what I've seen
Uh-huh.
when the creator is specifically like in his like one example is a young adult author that I read, Rick Riordan. He
Mhm.
does the Percy Jackson
Yes,
series.
yes.
And in his frequently asked questions, he's very clear. He sold the rights to Percy Jackson to the studio. He has no hand in what they do with the movies.
Mhm.
And it's disappointing because I love those books, but the movies are not good.
Mhm. Mhm. And that all just comes down to then you hit the business side of the film industry of who is making what kind of deal, whose lawyer won out what battle, who
Right.
said, yes, we're bringing on our studio writer to do this, and we really don't want the writer in there. I work for a film studio during the day, and it's been a fun place to work, but it's been interesting seeing a lot of kind of. I can't talk about the project because the film's not out yet, but it was an
Right.
adaptation. It was just, and the book that it's based off is one of my favorite books, and it was just interesting. So I was very excited being brought on for the film, but just watching the whole process of the rewrites and well, here's how this decision got made. Here's where the writer had involvement. Here's where they cut the writer out. It's interesting and at sometimes heartbreaking to see where decisions get made and why.
And you being like behind the scenes on that, I can't imagine, especially if it's one of your favorite books of all time, to have to like sit there and watch what's happening and then hoping against hope that it turns
Oh
out
yeah.
what you want it to be.
I just remember we storyboarded this great sequence that I was like, oh, I just want this to be in, and it got cut, and I was like, I was just devastated for a week because it was so beautifully done. But that's a conversation for a couple of years from now or a year from now. So I'm happy to revisit that later. But it's
I'll keep that in mind.
it's fun getting to watch things be made.
Now, as I said in the introduction, you're based in
Mhm.
LA and you do a lot of acting
Mhm.
and voiceover work.
Mhm.
And how did you get into that?
So I did theater in high school. That was kind of the gateway drug into acting for me. And then some point around my junior year of high school, I started realizing like I really love doing this. And I think if I had the right training, I would be able to do very well at it. I'd be able to excel. So then it started turning into I'm from Arizona originally, and I do travel between the two for projects, but doing research into kind of what schools, what kind of training would I need. Came out to California, went to college, studied theater and animation at Loyola Marymount University. And that was kind of, it gave me my first set of tools, but then expanding out of college, I've dove more into specifics of training. So more specifics of, doing scene study and working with different scene partners. And this play that I'm doing in December, I'm really excited because it's a scene partner that he and I had done acting classes forever, and we're both brought in to audition for this play. And he and I wound up reading together as the opposites, as romantic leads. And he's been a friend of mine for 2-3 years, and so it was just a great like, hey, we've totally got this down. We've been doing this for years. And voiceover, I found because doing animation, I had a lot of friends that were like, we need someone who can do like an old woman voice, and we need someone who can do like a 14-year-old girl. And I was in there, and they knew I did acting from theater. So they went, do you think you could try it? And started doing a lot more stuff. And that's how I got brought in on the film Babioles, which was a short by some people I had gone to college with. That it's a French fairy tale that no one knows exists. And the actual fairy tale is very odd, but they did this really great 7-minute short version of it, and it did really well in a couple little film circuits or festival circuits.
Okay.
And so that's how I got into that. And then coming out of college, my friend, there a lot of great voiceover actors in Los Angeles offer classes, and that's a great way to network and find out what you need for training, where you excel, what kind of voices what's in your wheelhouse of what you do well. And that's how I met Debbie. She was offering classes, and now fast forward 3 years later, she's a great friend of mine, and I call her my Los Angeles mom because she's just absolutely been a sweetheart and taken care of me while I've been transitioning from college to adult actor life.
Right.
Um, and it's a lot of fun because it's for voiceover specifically, you're given very little information going into a character. If you're lucky, you get a picture. Oftentimes, you don't. Sometimes you get a little blurb. Sometimes you get a lot of information. And then you'll get the sides. And sometimes it'll be just a page of, they'll take page 3 out of the script, highlight that character, record that, or it'll be a couple sides of like, well, here's what they're like angry. Here's what they're like sad. But it's a lot of, I like acting because it's a lot of, you have to kind of detective work it, figure out what's going on in the scene with a little bit of information you have. It's
Okay.
been a lot of fun. I've done some fun shorts, done some narration, trying to think, done some oddball like Google commercials where it was just a series of laugh tracks.
Okay.
But met a lot of cool people and get to go a lot of cool events. I had the privilege of working with Sean Schemmel 2 years ago. He's the voice of Goku on Dragon Ball Z, and then he and I kept in touch, and he was nice enough to invite me when they did the premiere of Resurrection F last year, so I got to go to that. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's a fun city that there's a lot. There's always something going on, and someone's always creating something. So just getting to know people and what they do and what kind of projects they get involved with. It's just been fun.
Now, my niece, she just graduated high school and moved back to New York,
Mm-hmm.
and she wants to become a voice
Mm-hmm.
actress. Or for those people besides my niece that's interested in voice acting, what would you say is the best first step for them?
The first step is to definitely train, because the biggest thing, voiceover, is train as an actor before anything else. Because as much as people think voiceover is, oh, it's just the silly voices, you have to be voice acting is first and foremost acting. So definitely take some scene study classes, learn how to break down a script, learn how to interact and play off of another person, and learn to. My training is based in Meisner technique, so it's a lot about listening and reacting off of a scene partner. Then the next step would be to take some more voiceover specific classes. You'd want to learn things like mic technique, how to, there's even simple funny things like how to turn your page in the booth so you're like the crackling of your paper doesn't pick up on the person's microphone next to you. And then you can start getting more into the intricacies of voice placement, how to use your different, the different like kind of airway or air places that air can flow through and how to use
Okay.
those to create different sounds. And then you'll want to create a reel and start submitting and start just getting your name out there.
Yeah, it's definitely not just going in somewhere or sitting in a tiny black booth or whatever
There will
and
be a
reading
lot of
through
that.
something.
There will be a lot of days in your apartment alone just making voices. My roommate always described living with me as like being in a horror movie because she said I was like being in a Victorian horror movie. She would be home alone and then just hear the voices of children down the hallway.
That would be creepy.
I gave her a heart attack one time, but anyway, and after that I started warning them.
Warning, I am doing voice acting
Yes,
practice.
warning. If you hear a 12-year-old boy in the next room, that's me. Warning.
That's
If you hear an 87-year-old grandma practicing witchcraft, that is also me.
That would be something if you had like neighbors come over or be around and like you're practicing something and it's just really out there and they would have to
Oh,
call the police.
I do sometimes feel like I need to warn my neighbors because I've had like video game copy come through, and so much of video games is the reaction of it's a fight scene or something, or someone gets set on fire. So one of the auditions was it was a the dialogue, here's the meat of the scene, here's them acting. Now we want a progression of screams. Here's as if they got kicked in the shin. Here's as if they got thrown off a cliff. Here's as if they got lit on fire and they burn for, we need 7 seconds of scream as they die there. And I always feel like I need to knock on my neighbor and be like, no one's getting murdered in here. I'm really sorry in advance.
that that is funny. I mean, I think there's something happened in Florida recently where the police were called because they thought something bad was happening, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just that I think it's people watching like The Walking Dead.
I mean, I could see that happening. Their mix is fantastic and terrifying.
Absolutely. Now, on top of being in the industry, as far as like working in the industry and your acting and your voice acting, you also, as I said, I found you on Instagram through
Hmm.
your
Yeah.
cosplays. How did you get first involved in getting into cosplay?
So I attempted a cosplay my first time. I think it was 2011. I'm from Arizona originally, as I mentioned. So I went to Phoenix Comic Con with some friends, and their family was really into cosplaying. They had gone, everyone, her mom, her dad. This is my best friend since I was maybe 8. So I tagged along with them, and they had these fantastic costumes that they had based off of the henchmen from Venture Brothers. And I knew they were going to dress up in something spectacular. So I had just gone through and kind of used some old Halloween costumes. So I had a really nice Batgirl costume. But I remember getting there and being like, I feel so underdressed. And that's the first time in my life I have felt that way. And I'm not okay with it. So the next year I wasn't able to attend because I did study abroad, and I got to study at Oxford, and I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and that school is literally Hogwarts, so that is a totally separate story. But I had a good reason for not being able to attend that one year. But the following year, which would have been 2013, I wanted to start building my own costumes. So my first two things I wanted to do was love the Little Mermaid. I'd made kind of low key costumes of her uh, for parties and events and Halloween, but I wanted to make that scene where she gets shipwrecked, and then Scuttle and Flounder and Sebastian are like, "We're gonna make you a little party dress out of this sail and some rope." And I
Yep.
always thought that was such a funny concept, so I wanted to make that costume. So I had not learned to sew at that time. So, and I'd been a costume designer in college. So I started by repurposing a lot of pieces of clothing. So I found like this kind of hippie gypsy skirt from a secondhand store that was tan and had all these like T splotches, so it kind of looked like that sail if it had gotten wrecked up, and then just bought some rope from a fabric store and made that costume, and then started building out from there, taking corsets and painting and gluing leaves on them to make poison ivy. And the more and more I did it, the more I found that with like Disney animated characters, I wanted to do the really traditional, accurate depictions of them.
Hmm.
But with other characters like comic book characters or sci-fi characters, I really wanted to take a reinterpretation. And I have always been enamored with or had an infatuation with all things 40s, 50s, 60s, kind of romanticized that era. So I wanted to take characters and go, what would they have looked like at that time? What is it at their core that makes them tick? What are the colors? What are the patterns? What are the shapes that if you can take that and kind of build off of it, you can still recognize them. So my first attempt at that was Harley Quinn for Comic Con last year. And I think that's the costume you would have seen. I had this skirt that I had purchased that's the diamond fabric that it's all different multicolors. It's blacks, pinks, reds. And then the character I was trying to go off of was if Harley Quinn was in the 50s, I always saw her as like the high school cheerleader dating the bad boy who smokes cigarettes behind the bleachers during the games, and like she's so enamored with him, and he wears the leather jacket, and he won't give her the time of day, so like this kind of like good girl turned greaser chick. So I had
Right.
built the hammer for Halloween the year before because I did the traditional one with the cat suit, with the jester cat suit. So I had the hammer, and then I built out from like a big 50s skirt, very tailored shirt, leather jacket, Converse, and then, of course, her blonde hair with her pigtails, and then to get some more of the red and the black, just tying little scarves into my hair. So that's how that costume came about. And then it's progressed each convention after that. I've been wanting to build another one. So then I did Sailor Neptune the same way because I think their costumes are already kind of an allusion a little bit to that 50s, the all aboard Gene Kelly, Frank Sinatra, the sailors of that era. So trying to make it a little more of a 50s sailor for the Sailor Scout. Um, taking, instead of a crown, taking like a doughboy hat and embellishing it with using some vintage brooches to create that kind of, they've got that big jewel on them. Bought a vintage mirror and some vintage gloves, because I always, if I do a retro or vintage inspired costume, I always like to have something I made, something that usually there's a big piece that I wasn't able to build, or I found the perfect fabric, so I purchased it from somewhere else, or a really tailored blouse that I need. And then I do like to include something that's actually truly vintage. And then my most recent one, which was for Comic-Con this year, was I wanted to do Poison Ivy. And I kept going back and forth of, do I want her as the kind of like 50s bombshell, like how they did DC Bombshells, where she's like a kind of vixen-y lingerie model. But I, again, am really drawn to her as the doctor, and her as kind of like a little bit of that like sexy hello nurse, but the really intelligent, really educated. I wanted the white lab coat, and I found this. I have it in the pictures I think I've shown, but it's this fantastic vintage skirt. It's green with this felt, and then it has these satin leaves sewn onto it. I found it in a flea market, and I saw that, and I went, "This is the thing that it's gonna build the costume off of." So I had a blouse that was the right color. Started building off of just kind of accessorizing, taking like I've got this leaf necklace that looks like, it's a modern reinterpretation, but it looks like a 50s, 60s Bakelite, which is big, chunky, plasticky jewelry that was really popular to that era. Big cat eye glasses, and just kind of started building off of that. And so that's, I've got a lot more I want to start building from that, but I do love that era, and I do pinup modeling, and it's something I always think it's a fun way to make a classy reinterpretation, but at their core, it's still who they are.
Absolutely. And I think one of those shots with that costume, the Pamela Isley costume, you did at a really interesting like
Oh, in
location.
the
The
cages. Oh yeah. So in the 20s, they built out in Griffith Park here in LA. They built their first zoo in Los Angeles, and I'm not sure when it got shut down, but they closed it down and then moved like 3 miles down the street to where the current LA Zoo is located, and built out a big new beautiful facility. But the cages are still there, and the old habitats. So my friend and I, she's a fantastic photographer. She and I had been talking about this for a long, long time, and we had no idea really how to get there. And we wound up hiking, I think, for probably the better part of 40 minutes, just trying to figure out where in the heck these were. But once we got up there were these fantastic overgrown cages. We found a couple that had these great giant leaves growing in them. But we wanted the idea of Ivy in Arkham, but I wanted the before and the after. That here's the doctor right on the verge of snapping. She's seen too many atrocities. She's angry. She's vengeful. She's locked up, and then kind of that blooming she has into the vixen that is Poison Ivy.
mm-hmm.
But it's
Yeah.
a fun location, although it's very, very dangerous. There were a couple times we were looking in places and going, that looks like a heroin needle, or that looks like the floor could cave in.
Oh, well, that's
It's
wonderful.
Los Angeles, so it is what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, those pictures were stunning. Like
Thank
when you
you.
started releasing them on Instagram, they were just like I kept seeing abandoned LA Zoo and I'm like, what?
I was going back and forth between tagging them in Arkham and the abandoned LA Zoo, but I was like, this is actually a place, and this is hilarious that I love that it still stands there, because it's such a great, looking back at like, here's what a zoo would have been like in the 20s, and you can kind of guess what different animals would have been in what cages, but there's like, looking at what a zoo looks like now, they're basically put them in like a broom closet.
Right.
Poor guys.
For anyone who's listening, where can they find you either on like social media or do you have a website? Where can people go?
Sure. My social media is my Twitter and my Instagram are both Van Kelsing, VAN_KELSING. It's a nickname I've had since I think I was about 13, and I love it. And then I've also got my website is just kelseywalmer.com, KELSEYWALMER.com. And my website, it's a little more of my voiceover reel, and I'll also have information on my upcoming performances. I do try to post those through Instagram too, but I've got, whenever I have a show or a performance coming up, I tend to have that on my website as a headliner, and then wherever you can go to purchase tickets.
Okay.
And then I'm performing this December in an original play. We're doing a revamping of The Farce, which is a type of drama. So we're going to be performing out of North Hollywood at the El Portal Theater, December 9th through 11th, and then the 15th through the 18th. I believe that's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 2 weekends. And you can purchase tickets and look up information on that at snowedintheater.com.
Awesome. And if anyone out there is listening, definitely, I mean, if you're not in the LA area, definitely take a look at Instagram, because what you post is really just unique unto itself.
Thank you so much. And if there are any photographers or other people looking to collaborate, just reach out to me. I check all my direct messages, or I've got an email address on my Instagram that I think that's how you contacted me even, which was great.
It is.
And I'm always looking for more people to dive into fun projects with.
Awesome. Well, Kelsey, it feels like we only got to scratch the surface today.
I know. I've got so much on Doctor Who and Star Wars and lots, but it's been a pleasure talking with you. Absolutely.
So if in the future we get some time together, I'd love to have you back to talk about some more of the stuff that we didn't get a chance to talk
Thank you. I would love to come back anytime.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for us getting together this time and getting to sit down and record. And I hope everyone that, listened got to really enjoy you, because you're one of the first people who is actually kind of like in the business as far as voice acting and acting, and even like on the being inside like projects. Like it's really cool.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I've gotten to get involved with some really crazy things in the last couple of years.
Well, thank you again so much, Kelsey, for coming on and talking to me today, and hopefully everyone has enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for listening and having me.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.